Your past isn't true. And I'm going to prove it to you on today's podcast.
I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited you joined me today because we're going to talk about your past. And as I said in the beginning, I'm going to prove to you that it's not true. We're going to start with a quick story. So check this out. How many of you have heard that story? Maybe it was a grandfather, maybe it was an uncle, maybe it was just a best friend. They went fishing. And for me, it was probably my grandfather or my dad. They went fishing and they came back and they tell these grand stories of a fishing or hunting trip. And as they tell these stories, they tell you about all the epic things that happened and all the amazing stuff that went on and the huge buck that they saw, but it just was out of range and they couldn't quite get back to it. They tell of the fish that was huge that they reeled in, they caught it, they got it on the hook, and there was a storm and the waves were crashing. And they reeled this massive monster fish in and they got it to the boat and they put it in the net. And as they put it through the net, it was so big, it broke the net and it got away. Crazy, crazy, crazy. These stories are huge and we do this. Now, let's talk about what we do. We love to tell a good story. We love to exaggerate. We love to make the details juicy and fun to listen to. And we love to keep it exciting and keep the emotions high. We love to tell a good story. And the things that happen to us in our past are oftentimes stories that we've reiterated over and over and over again. And we've told them so many times that now we know what makes people laugh. We know the parts of the story that make people emotional. We know the pieces that get them hooked and that draw them in. We know the pieces that just didn't work and we got rid of those along the way. But rarely are the stories that we're telling the truth. And it's not to challenge you in a negative way. I'm not saying, oh, how dare you, you liar. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that even in our best intentions, we still can't tell the truth about our past or about anything that's going on. And we can prove this over and over and over again. And all I have to do is I have to just bring a few people in a room, do something in the middle of that room with all of those people either sitting in the same area or from different vantage points. It doesn't really make a difference. They will all see something different. They will all have it tainted by what's going on in their world and their emotions, where they're at the moment when they come in. If one's sad, one's happy, and one's frustrated, you are going to get a version of what happened, a story of what happened that is sad, frustrated, or angry. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what emotion it is, or happy, frustrated. Those emotions taint what it is that they're going to see. And all of them are going to give you a different version of what the truth was. They all see it different. They all experienced it different because it was all tainted by their emotions that they were using to take in the information. Now, I digress. I said to you I was going to prove to you, and I am, that your past isn't true. And the reason we know it's not true is because we get bad at the details. And you know it. Sometimes somebody asks you, hey, what happened yesterday at this time? And you're like, oh gosh, let me try to remember what happened yesterday at that time. Well, I think we did this. And they're like, yeah, but something was said there. Do you remember what it was that was said? In fact, so many times, how many times have you said something that was amazing and everybody went around you went, can you repeat that? Please repeat that. It was amazing. That was the best piece of information I've heard in ages. And you're like, I don't know what I just said. It's gone. So you try to say it again, and it usually ends up being paraphrased differently, comes across differently. When we have that challenge from one moment to the next, what makes you think that you can remember a year ago? Well, let me remind you what it is. You think you can remember a year ago. You go, well, because it was very emotional. And now we come back to the first example. And the first example was very clear. If I bring 3 people into the room and all 3 of those people are having a very different emotional experience, and they're not allowed to interrupt each other, of course, right? One of them's angry, one of them's frustrated, one of them's sad, one of them's happy. They're all going to see the experience and have the experience in a different way. They're going to recall and recount that experience in a different way. That means that the minute after the show, whatever it was I was doing to present to them, they're going to say, hey, this is what happened. And this was my experience of it because it was tainted with how they felt. If I ask them the next day, it's going to get more tainted. If I ask them the day after that, it's going to be even more skewed. And as the days go by, the skewedness makes a difference. And all you have to do is be about an inch off. And we learned this back from our math days. If you have a straight line, if you just change it half of 1 degree, it's not going to be noticeable for right here, but you go 10 years out and it is off track by miles. And I'm just curious how accurate you think your stories are. How old are your stories? How long have you been telling them? How long have you been saying this one story? And I'm not talking about positive or negative. It could be either. And how much have you changed it along the way? Just incidentally, or maybe how much was it tainted by the emotion that you were feeling in the moment that you were having that experience? And I know you potentially have had an experience where you go back and talk to somebody that was there and you say, you remember that time when? And they're like, yeah, I totally remember that time. And you're like, and this happened and this happened and this happened. And they look at you and they're like, well, no, actually this happened. And you're like, well, it kind of sounds like what happened. And they're like, no, this is what really happened. And you're like, well, that's not what I remember. And you're like, no, actually, this is what happened. Now you get into this little story battle, right? In this corner, so-and-so remembers this from a negative perspective. And in this corner, so-and-so remembered this from a positive perspective. And we all remember our stories differently. And this leads us to this place where we can talk about this idea that there are always 3 sides to a story. This is generalized, right? 3 sides to a story: your side, their side, and the truth. They could be the world, right? You insert as many people as you'd like. But we don't know what the truth is. And so it's so fascinating to watch Sherlock Holmes go through and dig out the truth. He's still only coming up with one perspective, one version of that truth. What stories have you been telling yourself? What big fish have you created in your world? Is it a big fish about sadness? Is it a big fish about a belief about how you have to be sad or you have to be angry when this thing happens? Is it a belief about how you should operate with your emotions? Is it a belief saying that other people can make you feel a particular way? What is your big fish? What story have you been telling yourself? What story are you telling that somebody else told you and you're just passing it on? What stories are ruling your world and you just didn't realize that the past wasn't true? Now, this brings up one last topic that's of particular interest. If your stories that you have told aren't actually true, they might be real to you. Don't get me wrong. If you're telling them, they're real. If you believe them, they're real. Right? But what stories have you been telling yourself that now, if they weren't true, you could actually make a new decision? Does somebody make you angry every day? What story are you telling yourself to actually hold up that belief that says that person can and indeed has the ability to make you angry? That's an interesting thought. And boy, there's a rabbit hole to go down there. I could talk about it for ages, but we're going to stop for there at that point for today, because I just want you to focus on some of your stories. Some of the stories that you've been telling, your past isn't actually true. It's just your version of it, and nobody else saw it that way. So what can you get rid of? How can you trim the hedges? How can you prune the tree and help the apples grow better? That's a good question. I want you to start asking that. Realize your past isn't true. It's just the stories you've been telling. Let's tell some new stories. Let's work on telling some new stories, because you have some amazing things coming in your world. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to this. You have some amazing things coming your way. And the only way they will continue to come your way is if you can stop telling some of the bad stories that you've been telling up to this point that aren't even true. I hope this helps. If you know somebody that it can help, please share it with them today. Come check us out on Facebook. We have a cool group, Magic for Life. You can apply to get in. We only take like-minded individuals. And if you think you're that, come and join us. We do some cool things. We have some fun. And I would love to hear from you. Rate and review the podcast on Apple iTunes. And as usual, don't forget, every minute. We'll see you next time.
Happiness is a choice. Sadness is a choice. All emotions are a choice. Sometimes doing our emotions doesn't seem like it's our choice, but it is. You have control. You are the captain of your ship, and you must learn how to be the best captain you can be. Let me show you how. Pick up your free copy of my new book, Every Minute, at everyminutebook.com.